Hello, my name is Amanda Woods-McConney, and I'm from Murdoch University in Perth, Western Australia. Welcome to this presentation about teachers and career advisors and their perspectives about enablers and barriers in STEM education for secondary school females. It's been more than 3 decades. We've talked about STEM and females for 30 years or more. And so what do we know? We do know that female students achieve at the same level in STEM subjects as their male peers. And we also know that upper secondary school females are motivated. And for example, they're as motivated as their male peers and in physics, for example, here. However, we also see that our female students don't continue in senior secondary school or the university STEM courses when compared with their male peers. They don't continue at the same rate. So it is an area that's well explored. Let's look at what's new with this study. With this study, there's a shift from student perspectives to career advisor and teacher perspectives. And secondly, it has a different methodological approach. It has a two-way communication approach. And participants interacted in two-way information workshops, and I'll talk about that further in a few slides. But part of this was that the individuals responded and they interacted in focus groups, and those responses were part of the data for the study. So let's look at the study. As the title said, it's identifying what teacher and career advisors perceive to be those enablers and barriers regarding the students' continued participation in STEM. So who participated? We had 31 teachers and 19 career advisors. And looking at the teachers, they had a range of years teaching experience, from 1 year to 28 years. You had a range, like many different teachers and their specialties who attended and participated. We had a few administrator teachers. We had secondary science and math. We had secondary math, we had science and health and phys ed. We also had, as you can see here, primary and secondary. And part of this is because we had a school that came to the event that I'll describe in a few slides that are K through 12 schools. And then we also had an IT specialist teacher who came, and then others who did not indicate what they specifically taught. We also had 19, as I mentioned before, career advisors. And these folks are quite experienced in their current role. It ranged from 1.5 years to 25.5 years. And the reason I make this distinction with the current role is because they had a role teaching, usually secondary school, in the past. And many of the career advisors explained that they're also secondary school teachers. So how was this research actually done? What did we do? Now, the research was part of a Women in STEM and Entrepreneurship Grants project, which is funded by the Australian Government, Department of Industry, Innovation and Science. And there were 2 different events, if you will. One is 4 showcase events, and then we had 1 careers masterclass event. So looking at the showcase days, girls actually came on campus for the all-day showcase event with their teachers. 2 of the showcase events were regional, and the project paid for buses to transport the girls to the university campus. And by the way, the folks who were in Perth metro area, they also had transport funded and supported by the project. So everyone was supported in coming to campus. But The girls were brought on the campus, as I mentioned, and we had different events through that, not events, but things to do, activities during the day. We had guest speakers, and they described their background, and it was, the topic, the emphasis is to demystify STEM career prospects. So the guest speakers were people like publishers or folks who were IT specialists who were actually company heads of company, CEOs, and other people who shared, and all of the guest speakers were female, but they shared how their background in STEM led them to and supported them in their current career. The girls also attended workshops that were hands-on, and with these hands-on workshops, something like, topics like forensics, for example. And during those those showcase day activities, when the girls were attending and participating in workshops, I worked with the teachers. So with those teachers, when I worked with the teachers, they came and they participated in a workshop with me about developing girls' interests in STEM subjects. The Careers Masters class event was had 37 career advisors, and again, it was an all-day event. The careers advisors, they came to the university, and they had different activities, guest speakers, things that Murdoch could provide for students, for example, and guest speakers about careers. And I worked with them for an hour and also had a workshop. Similar to the workshop, I worked with teachers, but emphasizing the career aspect. So on the day and during those two-way information workshop for the teachers and the Careers Masterclass, this is the outline for the hour workshop. And I want to spend a little bit of time with the methodological approach because it is a little bit different. It was actually inspired by different like Q&A where the discussion is guided by participants. So I wanted to work with something where they were learning something, but also I was gathering data, and it's two-way. I piloted the approach with about 80 teachers and found that it actually would work. So, as I said, I presented, is gender an issue? And then, because, some people don't think it's still an issue, we've been talking about it for 30 years. So I talked about the research, and then also talked about some just examples where gender is truly an issue. The conversation is where we had that two-way conversation, and then after that conversation where they worked individually and then in small groups, talked about literature as far as some causes of gender being an issue, and then what you can do as a teacher or a career advisor. So let's talk about the conversation. In this, I needed to make sure that ethics was taken care of. So to keep the design straightforward, I avoided the need to go through schools and to get principal approval for this. I wanted to work with the teachers and the career advisors, and I wanted to make it anonymous so that it wasn't an issue with ethics. I needed to include an information letter, and as you can see here, the participants were asked to read the information letter, participate in the conversation, and then give the completed questionnaire to me if they choose to be part of the research. And this made sure that they were actual volunteers. So here's the questionnaire. Now I know that it's small. I wanted to show it to you because this is the instrument. And I wanted to emphasize, if you look individually is where people responded on the first page. And at the top it says, note, please make no mention of any identifiers of people or places. For example, student names, school names, or places, etc. And then it goes on to say, describe 3 enablers that support female students to pursue STEM subjects, and then describe 3 barriers that block female students to pursue STEM subjects. Then after they had time to do that, they got in their groups, and on the second page, the other side, one person recorded the discussion and identified with bullet points what those main points were that they discussed. And then they presented that to the rest of the group, the larger group. So here are some brief, just some results. And for example, with teachers, one enabler that came out, there were quite a few people who mentioned that teachers who are positive role models was an enabler. For example, teachers that girls want to be taught by in those areas, female teachers, and then I love this last one, science and math teachers who are enthusiastic, motivated, and connect well with students. If they happen to be female, that's an even more powerful influence. Some of the one of the main things that emerged from the data is that girls thought STEM was no interest or relevance. So this is very important and interesting for us as science education researchers. Career advisors, similar, teachers as female role models. So the career advisors compared with the teachers, they actually brought in the female aspect. And then with the barrier, the lack of parental understanding of STEM. So for example, the last point there is that lack of knowledge as to what's out there and parents focused on pathways to achieve a safe job. So reflections, I want to reflect on the approach. In this case, this methodological approach was successful. I gathered anonymous data in an interactive way. It could be seen as an alternative to, or maybe accompany surveys. And it could be further developed to actually incorporate more group responses or use electronic polling. So thanks very much. I appreciate your attention, and I look forward to discussing this further during our online conference. Thank you.